On my son's 7th birthday, he looked straight at me, then turned to his mother and asked, "Who is that man?" The question echoed through the small party room, between the blue balloons, over the faint sound of a birthday song playing in the background. I froze. My hands were still holding the gift. I had spent all night wrapping a toy car, something I thought would make him light up with joy. But he looked at me, as if I were a stranger. There wasn't the slightest trace of recognition in his eyes. I knelt down, so I could meet him at eye level. I tried to smile, but my throat tightened. I whispered, "Son, it's me. I'm your dad." He shook his head softly and stepped back, hiding behind his mother. The whole room went silent. The adults glanced at each other, uneasy. My ex-wife said nothing. Only my heart hit the floor. I picked up the gift I had dropped, but my hands were shaking so hard I couldn't even open the box. For the rest of the party, I sat quietly in a corner. I watched my boy run and laugh with the other kids, but it felt like I was watching through a thick pane of glass. There was a time when I was his whole world. Now, I'm just a faded figure in the background. When it was over, I walked out to the parking lot in silence. The door closed behind me, shutting in all the laughter and music. In the car, it was just me and the unopened box. I put my hands on the steering wheel, head down. I had already lost my marriage. I had already lost my job. But I never thought I'd lose my place as a father. Turns out, some losses don't need anyone to take them away. Time and my own mistakes were enough to erase me from my son's life. My name is David. I'm 37 years old. If you had seen me a few years ago, you'd probably think I had it all. A good job in IT, a small house in the suburbs, a gentle wife, and a sweet little boy. I thought life would stay that way. Quiet, safe. And then, one day, everything went up in smoke. The day I walked out of that courthouse, I felt like there was nothing left in my hands. The house, sold. The money, split. But the thing that broke me was a single line on that paper. Custody belongs to her. I stood outside the courthouse, holding that paper, hands shaking, thinking of my son's room in the house I no longer lived in. The desk with superhero stickers, the model cars scattered everywhere. All of it no longer mine. At first, I was allowed to see him once a month. I counted down to every visit. The night before, I'd stop by a toy store, pick out the exact car he'd been dreaming of. Once, I bought a Lego set. We spent an entire afternoon building it together. I still remember the moment. His tiny hand slapped mine, that big grin on his face. "High five, Daddy." That laugh, it felt like every weight in my body just disappeared. But those visits started to fade. The first month, he ran straight into my arms. The next, he just stood still while I hugged him. And after that, he turned away faster. With every visit, I could feel the distance stretch out, like someone was quietly drawing a line between us. I tried everything to erase that line. Pizza, cartoons, stories from school. But his smile grew thinner and more careful. I never blamed him. He was too young to understand the mess adults make. But every time I drove home, I felt like I was outside, watching his life through a sheet of glass. On nights after work, I'd come back to my tiny apartment, turn on the light. Empty room, I'd boil some instant noodles, sit there eating, scrolling through old pictures. Pictures of him at 4 years old, his arms around my neck, smiling so wide his eyes were shut. I realized that in my memory, he never grew up. He stayed that little boy forever. Reality was different. One day, I found a small t-shirt he had left behind after a visit. The fabric was faded. I never washed it, never threw it away. I folded it, put it in a drawer, like a way of holding on to whatever warmth was left. Life after the divorce shrank down to 3 things. Work, go home, wait. I cut out everything else. No travel, no parties. I saved every cent, hoping that one day I'd be stable enough to ask for more time with him. When my ex-wife texted me about his 7th birthday party, I stayed up all night. I drove across the city to find the exact model car he had once dreamed of. I imagined him running into my arms, shouting, "Daddy." I believed that, even with everything broken, that moment could fix something. But that day, in front of everyone, he just turned to his mother and asked, "Who is that man?" That night, I drove home with my chest locked tight, his question pounding in my head, over and over, like knocking on a door. I thought I had already hit rock bottom, but in that moment, I finally understood there are losses that don't need anyone to take them away. Time and my own mistakes were enough to erase me from my son's memory. That night, sitting in my car, I looked into the rearview mirror and saw a face I could barely recognize. Dark circles under my eyes, patchy stubble, both hands gripping the steering wheel, cold as ice. Outside, the street lights glowed yellow, blurred by a thin layer of fog, and I asked myself, how much longer? Am I going to keep losing everything? People often ask why we got divorced. I usually give the short answer. We just weren't right for each other anymore. But the truth cuts much deeper than that. I used to think that a husband's job, a father's job, was to earn enough so that his family never had to worry. So I worked like a machine. Some months, I only came home a few nights. The rest of the time, I was buried in the office. My son grew up in all the empty spaces I left behind. His first steps, his first day at school, even the time he scraped his knee and cried out for his dad. I wasn't there. She once said something I can still hear to this day. You think we need money? But what I needed was a husband, and what our son needed was a father. I heard her words, but I didn't understand them. By the time I did, it was too late. Divorce feels like a sentence. That day, it rained. The courthouse hallways were empty, except for the sound of a lawyer's shoes echoing on the tiles. I walked out the doors with a wet piece of paper in one hand and a bag of personal things I had gathered in a rush. I stopped at the steps, looked at the people passing by, none of them noticing me, and I realized I had just lost everything. The house, my wife, and the most precious thing of all, the right to be with my son every day. At first, the court allowed me to see him once a month. I tried to make every visit feel like a holiday. Toy cars, pizza, hours of Lego on the floor. I still remember the day. We finished building a small airplane. He smiled so big, his eyes disappeared, raised his tiny hand, and said, "High five, Daddy." His laugh filled the whole room. But as time went on, those visits became fewer. The next time, he just stood there when I opened my arms. Months later, he turned away faster. In his eyes, I saw hesitation. Where there used to be joy, now my apartment is just me and a few pieces of old furniture. There's still a sticky candy stain on the couch from the last time he came over, and in a drawer, there's a small t-shirt, faded from time. I never washed it, never threw it away. Some nights, I open that drawer, hold it, and breathe in deep, trying to find the faint smell of kids' soap still clinging to the fabric. I live like a shadow now. Work, home, throw together a meal, then sit there, scrolling through pictures of my son on my phone. Once, I watched an old video. He was learning to ride a bike. He fell, cried. I ran to him, picked him up, and said, "Daddy's here. You're okay." The look in his eyes then, pure, absolute trust. I watched that clip over and over, and what hurts most is knowing that look is gone. When I got the text about his 7th birthday party, I saw it as my last chance. I stayed up all night, wrapping a gift, telling myself that this time, at least, I would make sure he remembered me. But the party gave me my answer, with just one question: who is that man? That night, I came home to a dark apartment. I set the gift on the table and sank into a chair. The room was so silent. I could hear the clock ticking, and for the first time, I understood I hadn't just lost my son. I had been erased from his memory. I thought that was rock bottom, but it wasn't. It was only the beginning, because from that pain, another part of my life had just begun. After that birthday party, I thought I had already hit rock bottom. But the moment I saw my son step back, hide behind his mother, when his eyes met mine, it felt like a knife carving deep into my chest. That night, I stayed up, staring at the wrapped present on the table. The blue wrapping paper was crumpled. I peeled it back, layer by layer, each tear of the paper sounding like it was tearing into me. Inside was a shiny toy car, sitting there alone. I held it in my hands, but it felt colder than the room around me. What's the point of a gift when the person you bought it for no longer wants to open it? I texted my ex-wife. I'm sorry about last night. I just want to see him anywhere. Just one more time. Blue check marks. No reply. The next day, I sent another message. Silence. For a whole week, I typed the same words again and again and sent them off with a tiny, fragile hope. Every message ended the same way. Scene. On the 7th day, I drove to his elementary school. I didn't go in. I just sat there, a distance away, behind the wheel, watching through the iron fence. The wind swept across the playground, sending dry leaves spinning. Children in white uniforms ran and laughed, their shirts flapping like little flags. And there he was, smaller, thinner than before, but smiling. That smile was no longer for me. I gripped the steering wheel. Every step he took made my heart pound so hard. I thought it would burst. I almost opened the door, almost called out his name. But my feet were glued to the floor. I was afraid of seeing his eyes turn away from me again. Then, when his mother appeared and took his hand, walking him toward the parking lot, I just sat there, watching them through the windshield, until the two of them disappeared from view. That evening, I received an email from her lawyer's office. Just one short paragraph. Please respect the boundaries. Do not come near the child's school or daily activities. I read it again and again, every word, cold, flat, as if I wasn't his father anymore, just some stranger causing trouble. After that, my apartment became even quieter. Stacks of unopened mail gathered dust on the table. The rice cooker, plugged in the night before, now cold and hard. Every morning, the alarm would ring until it shut itself off. The room had no voices, only the ticking of the clock. One night, in that silence, I bought a blue-covered notebook. I started writing to him. Today I missed you. I wish I could see you. I wish I could hear you tell me about your day at school. Every day, just a few lines. I imagined that, someday, this notebook would find its way into his hands. Every page I wrote felt like a thin, fragile string, still connecting us. Writing was the only thing that kept me from falling apart. Then one night, while I was writing, my phone buzzed. A text from an old friend, someone who still lives next door to my ex-wife. I don't know if I should tell you this, but I think he misunderstood. He told the other kids that his dad left him, that you didn't want to see him anymore. You should find a way to let him know the truth. I read that message over and over. The pain hit so hard, I had to put the pen down. All this time, in his little heart, I was the man who abandoned him. Maybe someone said something in front of him. Maybe grown-ups' words became a different kind of truth in a child's mind. And in that version of the story, I had become the man who disappeared. That night, I couldn't keep writing. I just sat in the dark, the notebook still open, the pen lying on a blank page, because I finally understood. The words I write, he won't believe them. I started thinking about leaving, moving to another state, starting over. I opened a job site, scrolling through postings, but every time I hovered over apply, that image came back to me. His face on his birthday, the eyes that no longer recognized me. I closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair. A long sigh escaped into the silent room. I thought I was ready to let go, but I didn't know then that just as I was about to leave, life was waiting for me around the next corner with something I would never forget. That night, the room was so quiet I could hear every tick of the clock. On the table, a backpack was packed, a few shirts, old shoes, and the blue notebook I had already filled halfway. I had decided, in the morning, I'd leave. In another city, maybe this pain would weigh a little less. Close to midnight, just as I pulled the zipper shut, I heard it, a soft knock. Tap, tap! I froze. My heart raced. My head went blank. Who knocks at this hour? I walked slowly to the door, hand on the handle. Through the peephole, a dark, empty hallway. I opened the door carefully. No one, only a thin white envelope on the floor, the yellow hallway light spilling over it, like a fragile line of hope in the night. I bent down. On the envelope, written in clumsy, shaky letters. For Dad? My hands trembled. As I tore it open, inside was a sheet of paper, folded unevenly, still smelling of fresh paper. The handwriting tilted, awkward and messy, but I could read every word. Dad, I don't know if you still love me, but if you do, please don't give up. I want to see you. Me. Nay. I read it once. Then again, tears blurred the words. Spreading the ink like water, I sank down by the door, my back against the cold wall. Turns out, no matter what story others told him, somewhere deep inside my boy, there was still a small, fragile piece of faith in me. The letter shook in my hands, but a fire lit up in my chest. I didn't sleep that night. I laid the letter in front of me and stared at it, afraid that if I blinked, it would vanish. As dawn crept in, I whispered to myself, "All right, if you want to see me, I'll prove myself, no matter how long it takes." From that day on, I changed everything. No more texts, no more calls. Instead, every weekend, I drove to the soccer field, where I knew he practiced. I sat on the farthest bench, silent, just so he could see me. From a distance, the first time, he didn't notice me at all. The next week, I saw his small eyes glance my way and turn away. I kept going. Week after week, rain or shine, I was there. On rainy days, when the field was empty, I sat in the car and opened that envelope, reading every word, to remind myself why I was there. Months later, on a gentle sunny afternoon, practice ended, and this time, he walked toward me, step by small step, clutching a water bottle in his hands. I didn't dare breathe. The distance closed. 5 meters. 3. Then he stopped, right in front of me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then his little hand held out the bottle. "Dad, want some?" His voice was as soft as the wind, but to me, it was the most beautiful sound in the world. I took the bottle, nodding, my throat tight. "Yeah, thanks, buddy." He lowered his head, not daring to look too long. Then he turned, running back to his mother. Just a few seconds, but in that moment, a door opened. From that day, everything began to change. At first, just quick glances. Then little questions. "Dad, are you doing okay?" And slowly, he started sitting next to me, after practice, saying nothing, just sitting. I didn't rush it. I let it be. Every weekend, I kept showing up, a quiet reminder that I never left. One day, he asked softly, "Are you mad at me?" I shook my head. "I was never mad at you. I'm only mad at myself, for not being there more." He lowered his face, his small shoulders trembling. At the same time, I found a new lawyer, to fight for more time with him. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but this time, I wasn't alone. Another afternoon, as the field emptied, he came running, out of breath, looking up at me. "Dad, don't go away again, okay?" I crouched down, put my hand on his shoulder, and my voice broke. "I promise." One small letter in the middle of the night kept me from walking away. I don't know if my son has forgiven me yet, but from that moment on, I knew this. No matter how long it takes, I will stand right here, so that every time he turns around, he will see me. And that moment was the beginning of everything that came next. On weekend afternoons, I still sat on the farthest bench by the soccer field, like a familiar shadow. My son no longer looked away. Sometimes his eyes even searched for me, but that also meant his mother couldn't help but notice me. One Saturday, as practice ended, she walked up. Her face was calm, but her eyes sharp as a blade. "Can you stop this?" Her voice was low but firm. "You're just making it harder for him. He needs stability, not someone who shows up and disappears again." I clenched my hands, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I won't disappear again. I just want him to see that I'm still here. I'm not bothering anyone, and I'm not taking him away from you." She stayed silent, looked at me like I was a stranger, and turned away without a word. That look hurt more than shouting ever could. A few weeks later, my phone started receiving anonymous messages. "What's the point of a father like you showing up? Don't drag him down with you. Disappear before things get worse." I didn't know who sent them. Maybe someone from her family. Maybe just someone with too much time. But every time my phone lit up, I felt small, like a man walking alone against the wind. And then, it happened. On a scorching afternoon, practice ended, and my boy ran toward me, his face glowing. "Dad." I scored. I kicked it right into the goal. I knelt down, arms wide open. "That's amazing, son," I said, my chest swelling with pride. But before I could say more, a sharp voice cut in from behind. "What do you think you're doing here?" I turned. A parent, anger burning in her eyes. "Do you know how uncomfortable you're making everyone? Do you even have permission to stand here?" I stood up, trying to stay calm. "I'm just here to watch my son play." She folded her arms, her voice rising so the whole field could hear. "Watch. You show up here every week. Don't use being a father as an excuse to cause trouble. What right do you have to stand here? Stop disturbing the other kids." Every head turned toward me. Whispers? I looked at my son. His face had gone stiff, his small hands clenched, his eyes caught between fear and sadness. I took a deep breath and said quietly, "I'll leave. I'm sorry." I turned and walked away. Each step felt like someone was stacking another stone on my shoulders. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't touch my phone. I just drove in silence, my body drained of every bit of strength. At one point, I pulled over, turned off the engine, and pressed my forehead to the steering wheel. In that small space, I could hear nothing but my own breathing, and in that moment, I almost gave up. When I got home, I opened the drawer, took out the blue notebook, and laid it on the table. But my hands were shaking so badly, I couldn't even hold a pen. I covered my face with both hands, on the edge of breaking. Then, a small letter slipped out, falling onto the floor. I picked it up. "Read it again. If you still love me, please don't give up." Just one sentence, but enough to hold me up. The next day, I went to see a lawyer. I told him everything. What happened at the field. Everything I had tried. And that little letter. He stared at me for a long time, then said, "You have two options. Wait until she loosens her guard on her own, or take legal action for broader visitation rights. The second path will be hard. You'll have to prove you've changed, that your life is stable, and be ready for every mistake in your past to be dragged out. Are you sure?" "Das." I looked him straight in the eye. "I'm sure. I'm not fighting to take him away. I'm fighting so my son knows. His father never gave up on him." He nodded, his tone serious. "Then be ready. This will be a brutal fight." From that day, my life took on a new rhythm. Days spent working nonstop, nights spent in therapy sessions, and single-parent classes. I had checkups, fixed my finances, rebuilt my life, one piece at a time. Was I exhausted? Yes. But every time fatigue hit, I remembered that afternoon. My son's smile, as he ran toward me, proud of his goal, and the fear in his eyes when he saw me being sent away. I couldn't let that be the last memory he had of me. What I didn't know was this: that choice was about to open a storm, bigger than anything I had ever faced. I threw myself into preparing the paperwork. Pay stubs, psychological evaluations, medical records. Every document lined up neatly, all of them proof of one thing. I have changed, and I am ready to fight, to be present in my son's life. 3 months later, the lawsuit was filed. That same day, I got a call. Her voice was so cold, it froze me where I stood. "So you're dragging him into this fight now. Do you have any idea what this will do to him?" I took a deep breath. "I'm not fighting against you. I just want him to know I never left him." On the other end, silence. Then she hung up. Not long after, calls came one after another, from her side of the family. Every one of them, a rainstorm of blame, as if I was the one destroying everything. I listened. I didn't fight back. The morning of the first hearing, I arrived at the courthouse early. In the hallway, I sat alone, palms sweating, listening to the clock on the wall. Every tick felt like a hammer against my chest. Only one question circled in my head. Would my son think I'd betrayed him today? Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I want to see you. At the field. I'll be waiting." I looked at the time. 30 minutes. Before the session started, I stood, my chest tightened, my fists clenched, like I had to choose a single path. On one side, the courtroom. On the other, my son. I turned and walked out fast. The streets were blazing hot. I drove like I was running from something. At every red light, I glanced at the clock, watching the minute hand move, pounding my heartbeat harder. Finally, the field came into view. Empty. On a bench, A small figure sat, hugging a water bottle. I slowed down my steps. Didn't speak right away. He looked up. His eyes were tense, but also full of hope. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other. The wind picked up, sending dry leaves spinning across the field. I asked softly, "You came here by yourself?" He nodded. "I asked the guard to give me a ride. I just wanted to see you before you disappear again." My chest ached. I sat down beside him. "I'm not disappearing. I'm staying because of you." He reached into his bag and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, folded carelessly, still smelling of fresh paper. "I don't understand everything adults do, but I don't want to hear anyone talk bad about you anymore. Don't fight with Mom. Just stay." My hands shook. As I took the paper, the words blurred behind tears. I placed my hand on his small shoulder. "I promise, no matter what happens, I'll be right here." He stayed quiet, leaning into me for just a moment. That small lean gave me back my breath. I was late getting back to court. My lawyer looked shocked. I just handed him the note. He read it, said nothing, just nodded. And I knew, whatever the outcome, I had just found the one thing that mattered most. The weeks after that were brutal. Her family fought back hard. In court, every past mistake of mine was dragged out in the open. Each time I stepped out of that courtroom, I felt hollow. But every time I opened my phone, there was a text from him. "Don't forget to come to the field. I scored 2 goals today. Hang in there, Dad." 3 short lines, enough to keep me standing. One weekend after practice, he didn't keep his distance anymore. He ran straight to me, threw his arms around me, and held tight. "I'm not scared anymore, because now I know you'll always be here." I dropped to my knees, wrapped him in my arms, and closed my eyes. In that moment, all the blame, all the battles, disappeared. I don't know how the court will rule, but now I know one thing for sure. Even if I lose everything else, I will never lose him again. The morning of the hearing, rain poured down in sheets. Each drop hit the windshield and shattered into long, sharp streaks, like blades. I sat in the car, both hands gripping the wrinkled note my son had given me, squeezing it so hard it was crumpled. I took a deep breath and stepped out. The courtroom felt cold, thick, as if there wasn't enough air to breathe. Across from me, my ex-wife sat upright, her lawyer beside her, her family behind her. Every gaze pointed at me, cold, heavy with judgment. The judge tapped the gavel. Court is now in session. The hearing dragged on for hours. Their lawyer presented evidence, one piece after another. Photos of birthdays I missed, years I was absent, my work schedule, how many milestones I wasn't there for. Each page, each word, tore into old wounds. When it was our turn, my lawyer spoke slowly. "My job is stable now. I've been in therapy. I've been taking parenting classes for single fathers. And most of all, for months I have stood quietly at the edge of his soccer field. Not to disturb anyone, but so my son would know. I never left." Then he placed a blue notebook and a small folded letter on the judge's desk. "This is not a battle for custody. This is one father's journey to prove to his son that he was never gone." The room went silent. The judge flipped through the notebook, pausing for a moment at the uneven handwriting on that letter. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up. My legs felt like stone. My hands trembled, but my voice stayed low and steady. "I'm not asking to win. I'm just asking to be allowed to spend more time with my boy, so he doesn't have to grow up hearing people say his dad abandoned him." I looked the judge straight in the eye. "And if the court says no, I'll still be at that field every week. So when he turns around, he'll see me there." "Cray," my voice cracked. The room was still. Outside, the rain drummed against the windows, blending with the faint sound of pages turning. The judge was about to call for a recess. Then a small, thin voice rose behind us. "I want to say something." Soft, but it struck the room like a bolt of lightning. Every head turned. At the doorway stood my son, his hair and clothes soaked through, shoes covered in mud. No one knew how long he had been standing there. The bailiff stepped forward, but the judge lifted a hand. "Let him speak. This is his matter too." The only sounds left were the rain and the soft patter of his small footsteps on the wooden floor as he walked down the aisle. He stopped halfway, turned to the judge, and said, "I don't want anyone to take my dad away anymore. I don't want to hear grown-ups fighting. I just want my dad here." Das. Then he turned to me. His eyes were red, but steady. "I'm tired of looking at Dad only in pictures. I want him to sit next to me, for real." The other day, I gave him a note. Today, I came to say it myself. Dad, don't leave anymore. The entire courtroom froze. Even their lawyer looked down, unable to meet anyone's eyes. I couldn't move. My heart felt crushed in my chest. All I wanted was to run to him and hold him, but my legs were nailed to the floor. The judge struck the gavel. His voice deep. "Court will take a 15-minute recess." And in that moment, amid all those cold, judging stares, there was only one pair of eyes, looking at me with trust, eyes that pulled me back. From the dark, the 15-minute recess felt endless. I sat on the wooden bench, my hands clasped so tight. They turned white. Outside, rain hammered on the glass roof, each drop falling like the steady tick of a clock counting down. In the corner of the waiting room, Noah sat curled up, wrapped in a towel someone had handed him. His clothes were soaked through. Every now and then, he looked over at me. Just a quick glance, but even that was enough to remind me why I needed to stay right where I was. My lawyer leaned closer, whispering, "Your son just changed the atmosphere in that courtroom. But be ready, the decision is still up to the judge." I nodded, and in my chest, only one thought remained. Whatever the court decides today, my son chose to stand beside me. When we returned to the courtroom, the air felt even heavier. The judge scanned the room, then spoke in a deep voice. "Before this court delivers a ruling, we will hear directly from the child, the one most affected by this." He gestured. Noah stepped forward. The entire room held its breath. Small, thin, but his eyes burned like fire. He drew in a deep breath and spoke, his voice trembling but clear. "My name is Noah. I don't want my dad to be just a stranger standing far away anymore. I want to see him every weekend, to tell him what happened at school, to have him teach me soccer, to really have my dad with me." He paused. The room stayed silent, only the sound of rain outside. Then Noah spoke again, and this time, his words silenced everyone. "I'm tired of only seeing my dad in pictures, and in my dreams, I want to see him for real. I don't want to grow up without my dad around." That small, shaking voice hit me like a knife straight to the chest. Even their lawyer looked down at the floor, saying nothing. The judge withdrew to deliberate. Every second felt like a year. I lowered my head, closed my eyes. All I could hear was the rain and the image of Noah standing there in the doorway, soaked to the bone, but unshaken. Finally, the judge returned. This court recognizes that the petitioner has made meaningful, positive changes and has maintained a consistent relationship with his son. In light of the child's wishes, the court rules to expand visitation rights. David will be allowed 2 weekends a month, with the right to take his son out according to schedule. I exhaled, my eyes burning. It wasn't everything, but for the first time, I had an official place in my son's life. The hearing ended. Noah ran to me. No fear this time. He wrapped his arms around me tight. "Dad, that means I get to see you more now, right?" I nodded, holding him close. "Yes, and I promise, no matter what happens, I'm not leaving again." He hiccuped softly, clinging to my neck. "I believe you now. I'm not scared anymore." When we stepped out of the courthouse, the rain had eased. Through the heavy gray sky, a narrow strip of light opened up. Noah held my hand, tiny, but holding on tight. From his backpack, he pulled out a drawing done in crayon. A soccer field, 2 figures, a man and a small boy. In the corner, uneven letters spelled out, "Me and Dad. I drew this, so if one day you can't come, you can still look at it and know I'm waiting for you." I hugged him, unable to speak. That day, I understood something. Some battles are not won with law, but with love and persistence. I don't know how many more storms lie ahead, but from this moment on, I've finally found my way back to my son. After that day in court, life changed for me. I now had 2 weekends each month with Noah. It may sound small, but to me, it felt like an entire road finally opened. On the very first weekend, I came straight to his front door. No more standing far away on the sidelines like before. When the door opened, Noah ran out and threw his arms around me. His little arms held on so tight, like he was afraid I might disappear. Behind him, his mother stood still. Her eyes were still cold, but this time, she didn't stop us. I nodded. She gave a small nod back and went inside. For the first time in years, I held my son's hand and walked away with him, openly. The morning in the park was cool and fresh. We sat on the grass, sharing sandwiches we'd picked up on the way. Noah talked about school, new friends, a game he'd played the day before. I listened to every word. Every laugh from him felt like it was stitching up an empty space inside me. Sometimes I just sat there quietly, watching him chew, his hair messy in the wind, and thought to myself, so this is happiness, ordinary things like this. But outside of those moments, the pressure didn't go away. His mother's family kept calling, reminding me, don't expect anything more than this. One of them even said straight out, you're lucky to get this much. Don't make things worse again. I listened. I stayed silent. I knew trust wasn't something I could talk my way into. I'd have to earn it, with time. That afternoon, when I dropped Noah back home, she was waiting at the door. As soon as he went inside, she stopped me, her voice calm but firm. I have accepted the court's decision, but if you break your word one more time, just once, I will take everything back. I looked her straight in the eye and said slowly, I understand, and there won't be a next time. There was a pause. Then she nodded, and I realized we would never be together again. But at least in that moment, we were both putting Noah first. One day, during soccer practice, Noah came and sat next to me. He hesitated, as if he had to gather all his courage. Dad, why weren't you home before? Is it because you didn't love Mom, so she was sad? That question cut deep. I froze for a moment. Then I knelt down, so I could look him in the eye. No, son. I made a mistake. I forgot what mattered most. Being there for your mom, and for you. But there hasn't been a single day I didn't love you. I just realized it too late. Dash. He stared at me, as if weighing whether to believe it. And then, slowly, he nodded. In that moment, I felt a small part of the wall between us begin to crack. My life now revolves around those weekends. 2 days go by so quickly that every time I take him home, I stand at the door a little longer, just to hear the sound of his footsteps fading inside. The rest of the week, I work, I go to therapy, and count down the days. I'm learning to slow down, to listen. I've realized what I long for isn't a perfect chance, just a chance to be present. One evening, as we were close to his house, Noah suddenly said, Dad, next time, can we invite Mom too? I glanced at him, surprised. You want both of us to watch you play? He nodded, eyes bright. I just want Dad and Mom to watch me together, just once. I smiled, ruffled his hair. I'll try, but you have to promise me one thing. Even if grown-ups don't stay together, you will always have both Dad and Mom. Okay. He nodded. His voice was small, but firm. Okay, that's all I need. Looking into those clear, bright eyes, I saw it. This child understood, far more than adults give him credit for. And I understood something too. Sometimes, what a child needs most is simply for us to be there, together, even if we can no longer stand side by side. The following weekend, just as I'd promised Noah, I sent my ex-wife a short message. Noah wants both of us at his game. I'll stand on the other side, just so he can see us both there. It wasn't until late that night. My phone buzzed. Fine, but don't say anything in front of him. That morning, the sky was clear. Noah was more excited than I'd ever seen him. When we arrived at the field, I saw her standing on the far side of the bleachers, straight-backed, silent. Noah tugged at my hand. Dad, let's go closer. Over there, with Mom. That little hand squeezed mine, as if to say, don't let me down this time. I nodded, and we walked slowly. Without a word, the game began. Noah played his heart out, sweat soaking the back of his shirt. Every now and then, he'd glance up at the stands, and every time he saw us both clapping, his eyes lit up. For the first time in years, his mother and I sat only a few steps apart. No arguments, just the sound of a ball being kicked, and the shouts of children. When the game ended, Noah ran straight toward us. He grabbed both our hands, choosing neither side. "Did you see? I scored a goal." He took a deep breath, then said, "Can you both stand with me for a picture?" "Just one." We looked at each other. No one spoke. And then, after a long pause, she gave a small nod. A parent nearby lifted their phone. We stood still. Noah stood between us, his small hands gripping tightly. The wind swept across the bleachers. Everything went quiet. And in that moment, I could hear my own heartbeat. Click. The picture was simple. A child standing between two adults, hair messy in the wind, smiling so brightly it erased every distance between us. When the crowd left, and only the three of us remained, Noah ran back onto the empty field, kicking the ball by himself. His mother and I stood in silence, watching that small shadow move. In the golden light, quietly she said, "I can't change what happened, but for him, let's learn to stand together, even if only for a while." I nodded. "I understand. I won't break this trust again. No apologies. Just that one promise." And something in both of us softened. The sun sank low. Noah's shadow stretched long across the grass as he chased the ball, and in that moment, I felt both regret and gratitude. Regret for all I'd missed. Gratitude for the chance to still see him smile. On the way home, Noah hugged the ball, chattering, "Dad, today was the best. I wish every game could have both of you there." Dash. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, then at the passenger seat. She stayed silent, but her eyes weren't as distant. Softly I said, "I'll try, son. I promise." That night, after Noah had gone inside, I didn't drive away right away. I sat in the car, looking at the lit window, where he had just disappeared. The sound of the ball rolling on grass, his laughter, and the way his hand held on so tight. When he stood between us, all of it kept echoing in my head, and I realized something. Life will always have rainy days, but this time, I know that when the rain falls, there will be a small hand holding on to mine, so I'll never have to stand in the rain alone again. Since that day, every weekend, my car stops in front of the same familiar gate. Noah runs out and throws his arms around me, as if afraid I might disappear. 2 short days fly by so fast, but they are 2 days that give meaning to the rest of my week. Sometimes, when we sit together at a small roadside cafe, I find myself staring at his tiny hands holding a glass of milk, a little scratch on his fingernail, a stain on his shirt, and I realize how many little things like this I used to miss. No one can give me back the years I lost, but I can choose not to waste the ones I still have. I used to think a courtroom could decide everything, but now I know no piece of paper can make you a father. Only being there, patience, and love. In the past, every time it rained, I'd stand alone under the eaves, watching the water run off, and feeling like the world was leaving me behind. Now, when it rains, I sit next to Noah, listening to him talk about new friends, about a tough test, about the shot he's been practicing, and somehow, that alone makes my heart feel at peace. One late autumn afternoon, golden light covered the field. I took Noah to soccer practice like always, but today, I didn't hold my phone, didn't film, didn't think about work. Today, I just wanted to sit still and watch him run. He chased the ball, hair falling into his eyes, shirt soaked with sweat. Every so often he turned, and when he saw me watching, his eyes lit up. I nodded back at him, a promise without words. No matter what, I'm here. At one point, I found myself holding my breath, afraid time might slip away too fast. And I remembered the very first letter, the shaky handwriting, "If you still love me, don't give up." A simple line, but it pulled me back from the edge. If I had given up that day, would I still be here now, listening to him call out, "Dad"? Noah doesn't need a perfect father. He just needs a father who stays. And sometimes, to stay, a man has to learn how to stand up from nothing. When the game ended, Noah came running toward me. His cheeks were red, his hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. He hugged me and whispered, "Dad, did I play well?" I ruffled his hair. "You did great. Not because you scored, because you never gave up." He smiled, a smile that made the whole field brighter. We sat on the edge of the field, the ball rolling idly at our feet. Noah leaned on my shoulder and closed his eyes. I watched the last rays of the day stretch across the grass. and listened to his steady breathing. Quietly, I whispered, to him and to myself, "Son, I can't go back to fix the years I missed. But from today on, no matter how fast you run, I'll be right behind you." Sigh. He didn't answer, just gave a small nod, as if he believed me. Rain started falling. As we left the field, this time, I didn't run for cover. I held Noah's hand and walked straight through it. His small hand held mine so tight, so warm, that I knew I wouldn't be afraid of any winter anymore. Some rains can't wash away the past, but they can make the road ahead clearer, and I know this time I'll never have to walk it alone again.